Hi and welcome. Flat Earth, it's all Greek to me. Recently had a private conversation with friends, and one of them brought up something with the Bible. And those who know me, go back and look at my information, and I'm not exactly on that page. This person presented the information I was very intrigued by. Actually do a hangout and have the person present the way that that person went about doing everything, and it was very intense. As is going to be demonstrated here, I'm going to very shortly mute myself and off cam myself and let the information speak for itself. Put a message out there for anyone that has done this type of research and would like to review or have a rebuttal or a debate or something, to please in the comments, please put your information, where you got it from, the resources you used, and the research you have done, as this person has done a lot of research, which I have been shown, and I did not realize to what extent had gone to until it started to come up and come up and come up on different pages as I was being presented with things. I think it's very important to get the information out there. It's from the Greek to English translation. It took an awful lot of time, especially going between languages and discerning between different words and so forth, and making sure that you do it correctly so not to offend. Get the message out there, or I should say, however, get the message out there properly so that it can be heard by the person who is reading it, and or maybe not accepted. That's totally fine. I have with me several friends. Mr. Jibby Jedi is going to be the person who, if anyone has a question, please put it in all cap letters, and no, maybe nobody's listening at this moment, which will be fine. We'll repeat that as we go on in text on the side chat watch page. Brian's around. Mr. Wade is here. And now I present to you Knowledge Scavenger. Many know her as Paula, which we all know her as Paula. And Paula, you go ahead and take it away. And if anything comes up, just kind of raise your hand, and we'll jump in. And her channel, she has a very good taste in music as well. If you want to watch her playlist, music she likes, you'll be humbly surprised, as I was over the past couple of days. And the information she's going to provide you with right now is very interesting to me. I know everybody is going to be interested. The reason I say that is if I can understand it, everybody can understand it. And I thought it was brilliant. And that's why we're doing this hangout. And I want to present Knowledge Scavenger. Miss Paula, please go ahead and take it away.
Okay, thanks, Larry, for that very nice intro. I feel like I'm at an award show or something. Yeah, we were talking on occasion, and recently, I just happened to show this website that I made some years ago, and Larry was especially interested in seeing and wonder, what I made, how I made it, why I made it. And so what I think I'll do is start out with just a little background on how I got to the point where I'd even start a project like this, because it's obviously, it's not like I woke up one morning and said, hey, I think I'll translate the New Testament. So what I did, what I thought I would do is just give, not a life story, but just a really brief walk up to it. And then I'll show you what's in the site, how I made it, and then maybe, I don't know if I'll take a break between sections like that and then go on to some more technical things about about grammar and context and all that sort of thing. So I grew up in a family that was in the printing and publishing business. So we all would earn pocket change working at the family business, and we all learned typography. We learned For example, most people don't know that when you talk about different fonts and things, font is only one of three major ways to describe words or, different types of scripts, and that is font, family, and face. Those are all specific technical terms, but with the internet, it's come to be all put under the umbrella term of fonts. So we learned that. We learned you had to be proofreading if you wanted to print anything decent, and this was the local newspaper as well as job printing, and so you had to be really good at English grammar and punctuation. You had to be able to spell. You had to know what a good complete sentence looked like, how things should be broken into paragraphs, just a really good handle on English grammar in general and reading comprehension. And that happened to be something that, everybody's got a knack for a different thing. And that's my thing, is not linguistics in the manner of, people who can speak a dozen languages or anything like that, but just understanding the mechanics of language and how it works, especially in printed form, which is often misunderstood because it can get complex. And to say that it shouldn't be complex is to say that thought shouldn't be complex. We're trying to communicate, and it's complicated. There's a lot of factors, and we all know how hard it is to understand people when they're just writing as opposed to seeing them, and you can see other contextual clues that you wouldn't see if you weren't talking to the person personally, or at least on camera. So it's important to do the homework when you're looking at written words, especially in another language and especially from an ancient culture. So in order to understand it properly, you have to know something about the culture and not just the language, because words are not written in a vacuum. They're a lot of people treat them that way, especially the Bible, because they see it more as a code book or a mystery than ordinary writings, which a lot of it is. Ordinary doesn't mean mundane or strictly human either. It just means normal, rational communication in writing. And nothing becomes lesser of importance just because it's written down. It's just a little harder to get the meaning across because that's just the nature of language. So that's just, of course, I took all the language requirements in school, and I studied German in high school, and our German class was more about grammar than it was about actually learning German vocabulary, and that was 40 years ago, and I never used it. So for me to pick up German again, all I would really need, though, is a German-English dictionary, and because I understand how language works, all I have to know is which word ending means, what is it, past tense, present tense, whatever, and then I can piece it back together again. Even though I'm not at all fluent in German, I don't need to be if I've got the right tools. And that's what is the case here with this New Testament. I am not claiming to be any sort of expert translator or anything like that. All I did was have the motivation a lot of the people that I know, that I've been hanging around the last few years with also know, is that you can't just pick up something, Google something, and think, even read the Bible a couple of times and think that you're an expert on it. It just doesn't work that way. So what I did was, in years past, I was in a lot of conversation about women and Christianity and also things like that, and I would come across passages that seemed suspect to me, like they didn't fit in the text the way you would expect, the way the conversation or the dialogue was flowing, and then it would seem like something was out of place or something didn't add up. And so what I would do is I decided I was going to go right to the Greek, because that's the original language of the New Testament. And I'm just talking about the New Testament right now, which is everything from the 1st century AD. Okay, the Old Testament was originally written in Paleo-Hebrew, and I have a video called Language on my YouTube channel where I discuss the Paleo-Hebrew and the different types of script used. And there was also a Greek translation of that, which is actually the one that Jesus and the New Testament writers referred to. They did not refer to a Hebrew text. They referred to a Greek translation called the Septuagint. And so that's not what I'm covering today. All I did was the New Testament. And I called it the gift. And I explained in the preface why I called it the gift, New Testament. And I do have a printed version of it that I put on Amazon for instance. Some people just like to have a physical copy in their hands, but it's not anything I say in the preference that I'm no expert, and I'm just doing this more as just to share my research with the world in case it helps anybody, not to make a name or make money. I certainly don't make any money from it. So at least, I might make $1 or $2 a year on these things. It's nothing, and I give it back to charity. So what I did was I would do sections at a time that of particular interest of some passage that was being argued about. And then it kind of spread. I would do a little more section, then I would do a chapter, and then I would do several chapters, and then eventually it just kind of picked up steam by itself, and I wound up seeing the need to not necessarily do the whole thing, but a large portion of it. And to make this happen, I decided I needed to have a database of all the Greek words. Well, you don't just walk outside and pick up a database of the Greek New Testament. People copyright those things not because they have any right to copyright the Bible, they don't, but because they have the right to copyright their work on it, their assembly of it. And so I had to be careful where I got the Greek text. And another issue was which Greek text, and that's a whole complicated issue by itself I won't get into, but what I did is I found a bunch of tools, one of which was a self-paced course in Greek, basic New Testament Greek, which is not the same as modern Greek. It's very similar, but it's like there's differences between modern English and Middle English, which is what the era of the King James Version. And then before that was Old English, which is practically a foreign language. Few people can read it very well at all. So what I did was to collect a bunch of material, and in order to read that material and use it properly, I had to know how to read the letters of the Greek alphabet and some basic vocabulary. And the most important thing is I wanted to collect all the parsing information. And by parsing, I'm talking about grammatical components. What I'm going to do here is show a page I did in one of my other blogs of basic definitions of grammatical terms. And so I'm going to go through this quickly just to give you some idea of what I'm referring to when I use these terms. Not going to really cover apologetics right now, but exegesis is basically reading comprehension. Okay, it's interpretation of a text. It's how you apply hermeneutics. Well, what's hermeneutics? And we go down here and see hermeneutics is a study of principles and methods of textual analysis interpretation. That's just a fancy name for it. It's just the method by which you do these things. And then exegesis is when you execute those methods. Grammatical gender is not biological gender. A lot of languages other than English have a gender, masculine, feminine, or neuter, applied to many nouns. For example, as I have here in Hebrew, a man's hand would be referred to as she. Even though it's a man's hand, it's still, hand is a feminine noun, so it takes the feminine pronoun she. The Holy Spirit in Hebrew, I believe it's ruach or something pronounced like that, is she in Hebrew, but it in Greek, even though there's another word used to describe the Spirit, the Comforter is he, because the word comforter is a masculine noun. So if you don't know what grammatical gender is, you need to know, because it is a factor, a part of the context when you're trying to figure out what a passage means. So you have to understand what that is and what it isn't. It does not mean, that literally a man's hand is female. It doesn't mean that at all. That's ridiculous. But that same principle will be a factor, as I said, in other places where you're trying to figure out what a passage means and which pronouns go with which nouns. It becomes an issue. If you don't know this, then you won't know to match what words with what other words in a sentence, because unlike English, word order is not that important. You can use it for emphasis, but it doesn't change the meaning of words. And plus, Greek is an inflected language, which means that it makes heavy use of affixes to alter a word so you know where it fits in a sentence, regardless of its order. For example, in English, we could say dog bites man or man bites dog, and they mean two very different things. But in Greek, you can switch the word order around completely, and it doesn't make any difference to the meaning because it's an inflected language. And what I mean by affixes is prefix, infix, or suffix. That means a piece added or changed on the front of the word, the middle of the word, or the end of the word. So that's what an inflected language is, and that's what Greek is, and that's how you can tell precisely which words go with which other words in a sentence. Even so, there are areas of ambiguity that even the best scholars could say it could go this way, it could go that way. It's not as though they're being arbitrary and picking a meaning. It's that they truly don't know they can't talk to the writer, the human writer of the words, and ask them what exactly they meant there. And just briefly, I'll mention the concept of original copies. There is hardly any ancient document from that long ago that we have original autographs. Autographs are the handwritten originals. Now, there are lots of copies, and what they call the earliest copy is called the earliest extant. And what that means is by various methods, which are valid methods because they're used for every document of antiquity, not just the Bible. There's nothing special about the methods used and the science used for determining the age of a document that's different for the Bible than anything else. There are people who think it should be, but I don't agree with that. I think the same methods apply because these are ancient texts, and you have to treat them, first of all, as ancient texts so that you remove a layer of bias when you do that. And nothing that I know of has been as scrutinized by as many people for as many years as the Bible has. So I say that just to make the point that this is critiques of the Bible is nothing new, and you'd be hard-pressed to find any other ancient document or text that has been as scrutinized as heavily for as long. At any rate, we have to understand all these aspects of grammar and syntax and everything else if we're going to have any hope of understanding the Bible or any other ancient document that we don't have firsthand. Now, people would say, well, you don't have any original documents, therefore this is, people could make up whatever they want. But as standards go for ancient documents, if you throw out the Bible, even the New Testament, you have to throw out pretty much everything, because the Bible's textual history actually is better attested than pretty much anything else in its class. For example, we have documents from within a generation, or say up to 150 years from the time of the writing, which we determine by the content. Since the Bible mentions names and places and kings and all sorts of things that give you a clue as to when this was written, not to mention the material on which the earliest copies are found. Compared that to, we have something like 25,000 documents of various, there are some minor disagreements, but these usually have to do with weights and measures and coinage and a few spellings of names and things like that. But we have, and that's just the Greek. Well, it actually includes the Greek and other languages of that time, but that's the wealth of information we have to go on with the Bible, which we don't have. It's like, I think it was Plato, one of Plato's writings, that's the earliest extant copy is 1,000 years after Plato, and yet nobody questions its authenticity. Nobody questions its content. And so if you compare the number of manuscripts and the short time between original writing and earliest copy, the Bible just stands out like a sore thumb. It's unparalleled. So I don't want to go deep into that. I've got stuff on my website, stuff, and some videos that you can go into deeper on that. So just to finish out these terms a little bit, well, you can read these if you want. I want to do this one thing about translation that's pretty important. Translation is not simply copying a word from one language into another language. This little cartoon here is in German, obviously, and by itself, it doesn't make any sense in English. If you just did a word for word, it would come out as, oh my God, I can no oil see. Okay? That doesn't make any sense. That's not a good translation. It's technically accurate word for word, but it doesn't make much sense at all in English. And if we improved it ever so slightly, it would still qualify as literal, but it still wouldn't be, you wouldn't be conveying what this is actually a joke. You still wouldn't get it. I can't look at oil. That doesn't, what's so funny about that? But if we say, I can't stand the sight of oil, then we get it, because these are robots looking at spilled oil on the ground like we would look at spilled blood on the ground and say, I can't stand the sight of blood. So the problem with what most people would say about translation is that they think, oh, well, this version or that version of the Bible is accurate because I can look in a dictionary and see this word. And so if you try to qualify it and say, well, no, you got to consider X, Y, and Z, then they'll say, oh, you're just trying to, make up whatever you want. No. There's rules for language translation that I'm not making up, and that you have to understand if you want to say you understand what's going on with the Bible. So I just wanted to use that illustration to explain why you can't just say, I read, the mainstream translation and that's authoritative, and anything little old me does can't possibly be right. It's not that simple, and there's a lot of different translations, not just in English either. So there's room for disagreement, but you have to know how and why to disagree. And to do that, you need to look at the language. What a lot of people mistake for a literal text is something called transliteration, which is just copying letter for letter, not just word for word, but letter for letter. So there are some words that made it into the English language that were primarily because of the King James, where they didn't want to offend the king. So instead of translating what a word meant, they transliterated it and made up a new English word that never existed before, just so they could hide the meaning from the king, because they were afraid he wouldn't like it. So that's just some background. And like I said, you can read the terms if you're so inclined. But that's the sort of thing you have to know before you do something like a translation. So what I did was I didn't just do a translation. I explained in the preface why I did everything I did. And some issues with times and dates and things that some people say are why they think there are contradictions in the Bible. For example, the week of Jesus' crucifixion, there's some differences in the account that don't seem reconcilable, and they call those contradictions. But when you know how they determine times and dates, it clears up. For example, one gospel says that Jesus was crucified at the 3rd hour, and the other says it was about the 6th hour. But those both mean the same thing. Because as I explain here, I'll just read this real quick. This is a quote from an actual scholar, David Lipscomb, from 1831, 1917, and there's the title of his commentary. So this is his explanation, not mine. And he says the whole time from the 3rd hour to the 6th, that is from 9 to 12, was called the 3rd hour. And the whole time from the 6th to the 9th, that is from 12 to 3, is called the 6th hour. John, meaning the Apostle John, who wrote the Gospel of John, does not say it was the 6th hour, but about or near the 6th hour. So when he says about the 6th hour, and Mark, the other gospel writer, says the 3rd hour, we're to understand that Mark takes the whole time of the 3rd hour from 9 to 12, and that John puts it near 12. So in either case, our Lord was sentenced to between the hours of 9 and 12. So most people, almost all of them, will say that there's a contradiction between Mark and John on the time of Jesus' execution, or at least the time that he was condemned. So this clears it up. And this is a part of context that you have to know. And if we can get that easily misled by not knowing context in this one incident, then how many more are there? And these are some of the questions I wanted to answer. And so I did a ton of research to find out. And there's more there I won't go into right now. This is what I did, actually. This is the text itself. I put it in paragraphs. I wrote individual verse markings down, but I put them in paragraphs because that's how English works. And if you ever saw the earliest copies of Greek New Testament, it would be what we could call the mother of all wall of text. It was all capitals, no spaces between words, no punctuation. The entire New Testament was written that way. The earliest documents are written that way. And so it took people quite a while to go through that and separate it out and use a whole bunch of other documents that, later in time there would come up with, the people eventually began to write in upper and lower case and use some punctuation and spacing and things, because at first, the earlier back you go, the more of a premium paper and writing materials were. You didn't just go down to the store and buy a ream of paper and a box of pens. You had to, get some animal skins or whatnot, harvest some papyrus, whatever there was, and it was expensive. So you used every inch of that stuff. And that's why they crammed all the wall of text together. So that wouldn't work very well. Even in Greek, it was probably very hard to read. And so eventually when it became feasible to do so, they put in the spaces and all that. So that's what I did here, is I put things into paragraphs. Even the older ones like the King James would make it in just verses, but they would put a paragraph mark. A lot of people don't even know what that is. It's just that little, like a capital letter P with 2 lines, an extra line in it. That's a paragraph mark. And so what I did, I just wrote it in paragraphs. I put the spacing in and all that. There's also working footnotes. For example, I could click this 3. It'll take you down to the bottom of the page and highlight which footnote that's for. And then you click the number and go right back to where you were in the text. So yes, I wrote all the software. There's a search function. It is not robust. It's very basic, and it's case sensitive. But it's at least something. It'll at least help a little bit. I also did a commentary. I did one on all 4 Gospels together. I tried to weave them into a synopsis, get all 4 of them out together and try to match up events. And then I did a commentary on that and all the rest of it. Here is really the nuts and bolts parts that I was showing Larry the other day. This is the interlinear. And that means there's a line of English, a line of Greek, line of English, line of Greek. And what that does is allows you to get as close as possible to the original language without knowing it yourself. So, for example, if I want to know, let's look at the Gospel of John. That's a little more familiar to a lot of people. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word resided with God, and the Word was God. Like here's the word logos. If you hover over it, this little thing pops up and gives the parsing. That's the line on top tells you it's a noun. It's in the it's nominative, meaning it's the subject of the sentence. It's a singular noun, and it's a masculine noun. I also color coded it so that if I happen to print this out, since I would not be able to get the pop-up information, it would still tell me at least the grammatical gender, because blue is male, red is or masculine, red is feminine, and purple, which yeah, there's a purple one, is neuter. And of course, the black words, it doesn't apply. But it tells you all the grammatical parsing, and then underneath is what's called the semantic range. That is the list of meanings, all the possible meanings of a word. And people will say here again, oh, you can just pick and choose. Well, no, the context tells you which one is probably the most likely meaning in a sentence. And you need that because, for example, in English, you might have, I put the box, or let's see, I put the ball by the trunk. Okay, what does trunk mean in English? It can mean the elephant's nose. It can mean a box where you keep things in. It can mean the main part of a tree. It can mean male swimwear. It can mean the back end of a car if you're in America. So we got at least 5 different, very different words, very different meanings for the word trunk. It's spelled the same, it sounds the same, it's all the same word, but it has at least 5 very different meanings. And so that's what's called the semantic range. And you pick which one, not just arbitrarily, but by the context. So that's what I'm putting here in these pop-ups. That's all the grammatical information you need to figure out what the Greek says without knowing Greek. And that's why I did that. So that tool's available. And then we have also a parallel, which is just kind of the same thing, just it's not an interlinear. It's in case you wanted to copy a section of scripture, or either the English or the Greek. This separates it out. That's all it does. I have a few downloads here for, I go through a process where I can make a PDF of these things. I wrote a bunch of scripts to do that for me, to translate get it from HTML documents in a database to my home computer disk, and then I wrote scripts that would go through that and create a PDF, and it's a number of steps. I have what's called a bash script on Linux, and there's another program called LaTeX. It's written L-A-T. Here, let me just type it in the chat here. And then camel text, they call that when you. Let me spell it right. Camel text is when you have capital small like that. It's they pronounce it LaTeX, and it's an old piece of software, but its purpose was to make high quality professional PDFs from a text document. And so I have to convert from HTML to LaTeX language and then run it, and it creates this PDF for me. Free, but it's a monster download. If you don't have Adobe Creative Suite, this is what you use, but yes, there is a steep learning curve of that. So that's the site that Larry was asking me about. I also made I had to make tools as I went along in order to create the text in the first place. I had to scrounge around or scavenge for bits and pieces of the Greek text that were not copyright protected, and then take those documents and write a script that would go through and pick out the parts I wanted. And then here's one of those. This is the back end of how I made this stuff. And for example, I looked up the word egeneto, which means, well, you can see the semantic range here: come into being, generate, appear, happen. And then all the grammatical information, whichever parts of speech it is highlighted below. And if I wanted to change it, I would just click on something and then save it. But I also have one for, and this ST is a Strong's number. Strong's Concordance, I have to say something about that because people always get uppity about, this Strong's Concordance, this is the authoritative thing, and you disagree with it, therefore you're wrong. Strong's is a concordance. A concordance is not a dictionary. What a concordance is somebody, like, for example, Strong's is keyed to the King James Version only. What it does is it lists all the words used in that particular translation and gives you the range of meaning according to how the translators used it, not according to any normal dictionary where you would say, this is how everybody uses it. Instead, it's how this one document used it. So that's what the difference is between a dictionary and a concordance. But what the value is of a Strong's number is that every root word is numbered, so you know exactly which root you're talking about, and it's helpful for cataloging and looking things up. That RT is the root word, so this is the Greek root word, and then here's the actual word, and then here's the transliteration. I abbreviated it as XL, transliteration. You remember what that is? It's just taking the Greek letters and turning them into English letters, okay? So people, if you don't read the Greek letters, you know how to, at least some idea of how it's pronounced. And then CC is concordant meaning, which is a quickie base meaning that is the major meaning, the primary one. And then down in this box, I put all the semantic range of each form of the word. And there is at least 16,000 words in this dictionary, because each form of the word is listed as a separate entry, even though there may be, you know, in a lot of other words, there's a whole list of these here that have the same root, but each one is a separate entry. This is how I work with the verses. I made this tool to, if I look up the reference and then I can click on an individual verse, and it will come up with, I have a footnote there, so that's not a good example, but here's the Greek line, and then this is how I maintain the site. And the same for the commentary. I have all my material here. Somebody asked a question about Hebrew. I'm not sure exactly what they're asking about Hebrew, other than it's not used for the New Testament at all. You can buy Hebrew Bibles that do translate into Hebrew, but the New Testament was not originally written in Hebrew. It was written in Greek. There are a lot of people who believe it was written in Aramaic or possibly Hebrew. There's the Hebrew Roots movement. I'm pretty sure, but not positive, that Rob Skiba is in that group. They're very much into practicing Judaism. And I don't know, don't quote me on that. I don't know if he believes the New Testament was written in Hebrew originally. But what's going on with the New Testament is we have Hebrew thinkers writing in Greek. So there's going to be expressions that are typically Hebrew in the way a Hebrew would say something, but they're conveying it to a Greek audience. And so that's where there's a little bit of confusion as to why, you know, what was the original language. It's a mixed bag. But as far as anyone knows, the earliest documents of the New Testament were written in Greek. The Old Testament, as I said, there is a Greek translation that Jesus and the apostles used, but before that, the original was Paleo-Hebrew, and then it was changed to a different script. And like I said, I have a video about that. But it really doesn't have much bearing at all on the New Testament. Other than that, then the reason I'm even saying all this is because this is pretty much my life's work. This is the amount of research I did to say that I think I can safely say that I'm pretty familiar with the New Testament. I looked at every single word, how many 16,000 some words there are. I looked at every one of them because I entered them into a database and put all that grammatical parsing that I showed you a bit ago. All this information, I had to look up each word. I also made some temporary scripts that would help me find the words I hadn't done yet in a particular chapter to help speed that along. Even so, it was very, very tedious, and it took many years to do. And it isn't just the mechanics of translation. You also have to know figures of speech, not only Hebrew thinkers, but Greek thinkers as well. And then you look at the time of the writings, which is what the commentary is about. You can, each book would tell you a little bit about when that book was written and the general context of it. And in the commentary, I also do an outline so you get some idea of the thing. One particular thing of interest is the book of Romans, which is a rhetorical writing. The entire book is a typical ancient rhetorical method. And what that means, this is what's called a chiasm. And it's a pattern after the Greek letter chi, or chi is pronounced, chi is how it's typically spelled, pronounced chi. That's the letter that looks like X. Okay, and the reason for that is they would argue from a general point up to a specific point and then go back in reverse order. So the point where the X crosses is the point of the argument. Okay, so where the X crosses is where they led up to it, they narrowed it down to that point, and then they went back out in reverse order. So that's their method of arguing, and this letter to the Romans that Paul wrote is one giant rhetorical argument. And so understanding that will help you to know where Paul's coming from and why he wrote things he did and why he seemed to come back to certain things, because he was tracing back through his arguments. So there's all sorts of things you can do to research, like I mentioned also earlier about the times and dates. Understanding how they reckon time will clear up what seemed to be to critics as a contradiction. There's also different words for, I explained how I translated the word that could mean any of these three in English. There's one Greek word, pisteo. Whether Jesus was nailed to a cross or a stake, I'll go into that. That's a big deal to the Jehovah's Witnesses. The word church, that's not my favorite word. It's the word is ekklesia in Greek, and it means a congregation. It means, some will say, an assembly. It's just a gathering of people. And most people don't know, most Christians don't even know that that word was also used for an angry mob of pagans who was going to lynch Paul and one of his traveling buddies. That gathering was called an ecclesia. So it's not a unique word. It's just come to be that through tradition and over time. But the New Testament didn't use it as a special word. It was just, by context, you would figure out whether they're talking about any gathering at all or a specific group of believing Christians. So there's other things that are part of the context that really have to be considered before you can really say you know the Bible well enough to critique it. Most people don't do that. Not even most Christians do that. I'm not saying I'm any better at it. It just happens to be my area of interest. And so it would be helpful if anybody wanted to dispute the content of the Bible to show that they've done something similar, so we can talk without having to reinvent the wheel, just as you guys know about, having to explain the same principles of flat earth to people, each new that comes around to say the same beginning basics over and over again, it gets old. So I spent a number of years debating all this stuff, not only with unbelievers, but also fellow believers. And so it isn't as though like I said, I just woke up one day and said, I'm going to do this. It's been a bunch of years. I don't even know. I didn't keep track because, like I said, I didn't plan to do this. It just happened as I went along. So that's pretty much all I have to say, I guess, about this website. And so maybe we'll take a little break here and everybody can get on the mic again and take it wherever you want to go next. Hey, Larry?
Okay, that was good. I enjoyed the presentation, and obviously there's, whether there's a bunch watching or not, I think it's about the content and about the work and about the commitment to actually look into something. Isn't that what everybody's actually doing? Like looking into things and dissecting things, and it comes under so much scrutiny all the time about different things. You can grab, obviously, different Bibles. You can have a bunch of them. You could have a stack of them sitting there, and they all say something different. I thought It was important how to many that you looked into this. You're not just coming at it from, hey, I just read something yesterday in the paper, and now I'm going to go ahead and present it and be that be that person. And that's why I thought it was very important to do this type of presentation, so that you've done the research. And I thought it was very interesting the other day, and I'm like, wow, we really need to put that out there and let people think of it as they may, and dissect it. Also, for anyone who has done that type of work, as Paula just said, on the research and looked into it, and not necessarily saying just on Google Plus or Google or wherever you got to go on the web. I mean, actual pull out a book and read a book for a change, and look into different things, and bring up different types of text and go through it in a fashion way, which not too many people do anymore. They're more into the quick way to do it, and okay, that's it, we're done. Okay, we're done here, and boom, they're gone. Take some time and look into it. For myself, I believe it's it's built into our DNA with the 10 laws. That makes me somebody who does believe in the Bible. Yes, I do. I believe in a creator. Yes, I do. The text after that, it gets so muddled, or it does become muddled, and that can become a problem. And that's where so many people get lost. And I think it's done on purpose. I think it's done maliciously, and I'm not going to swear because we're talking about Bible talk. So I'll mind my words. I will be on my best behavior that I can, and I will present it that way. I'll say, Paul, that was awesome, and we were talking about this the other day, a couple days ago. Out of my mind, I wanted it to be presented and be out there. People get attacked as a messenger, and maybe the messenger has done some research, and maybe the messenger is smarter than the person who wrote the message, or maybe smarter than the person who receives it. And somebody to take the time through and look at things instead of just throwing it out there, which some do as what I call vomit, and claim to know something, and all of a sudden all they do is just pull something up. Oh yeah, I saw it over here the other day because it was on Facebook, and this is how it is. And okay, well, go ahead and pull it up 2 days later, and they change the whole context of what they pulled up, and now they look very silly because now they're doing and presenting something that is possibly 180 degrees to the opposite of what was presented a couple of days ago, and means nothing to what they were trying to present in the first place.
Yeah, that's exactly the point about context, and especially is a big issue with written documents, because you can see, you were just mentioning how easy it is for somebody to twist something that was said by taking it out of its context. And so that's why it's so important to for something in another language, another culture, another time, to do research about the context. What was the culture like? What did they consider good and evil, as far as for example, I've used the example of Japanese culture sometimes on how moral sensitivities can change, and we can't impose our modern Western standards on ancient Japanese culture, such as, for example, if somebody was dishonored, they were supposed to basically disembowel themselves, and that's why a guy stood behind with a sword ready to chop off their head if they didn't do it right, so they could still die with honor. And to us, that's just barbaric and disgusting. And if we were to judge the ancient Japanese by that, we would say they were just these terrible people. And people do that with the Bible too. They don't understand the context. They don't know anything about the culture. They don't care. And so they impose their own moral standards on an ancient culture, and it just doesn't work. I mean, there are certain things that are timeless, but when you get into some of the details, it's like, things that don't make sense to us aren't necessarily wrong. You have to know whether they were wrong then, and deal with that aspect of context. So that's a big issue. And when it comes to all the variations of translation, that's another issue, is saying things in other words. Every time you say in other words, you're doing what's called a paraphrase. A paraphrase is within a language. Okay, it's not between languages. Some people say that every version of the Bible that is not very, very literal is a paraphrase, and that's not true, because if you're going from Greek to English, you're doing a translation. No matter how bad you do it, it's still a translation. But if you go from Middle English to Modern English, you're doing a paraphrase. Or if you're saying the same thing in English a different way, like you could consider, well, you can't call mine a paraphrase because I went to the Greek, but if there was one called the Living Bible. It's now the New Living Translation, but the Living Bible was an actual paraphrase because it was done from the King James. Somebody sat down with the King James. Ken Taylor, I think, was his name. He wanted the Bible to be more readable for his children, so he sat down with the King James, and I think maybe the New American Standard. I'm not sure which other one, and wrote it in what was to him modern English at the time. And then so he paraphrased because he was going from English to English. So that's what people do when they preach. You know, there's a lot of King James onlyists who will say, well, no, this is the word of God, but every Sunday their preacher paraphrases it because he puts it in modern English because it's not modern English. And a lot of meanings have changed. Like the word let used to mean prevent. It totally has done a 180 in meaning in English in less than 400 years. It used to mean to prevent somebody from doing something. Now it says to allow it. So anybody who explains that is paraphrasing. And that's why there are so many translations in English, because English is not a dead language. It's always changing, and you can't just dictate from the top down what English shall be. I mean, people make up new words all the time, and the meanings change. It used to be like the expression lucked out. Used to mean you ran out of luck. Now it means you got lucky. So that did a 180. It did it in my generation. So yes, you do need to keep making translations in English, and that doesn't mean one is right and one is wrong. It just means it's a living language. So that's why there are so many translations.
Isn't that the situation we're in with the lawyers and everybody and the court systems and the definitions of what words mean?
That's a whole different animal when you talk about the law, because
yeah, exactly. We're not going to get into that one right at thing. Something different. This is something that is a Bible study, course, and take its course. And the reason I have to say the reason that I felt so about doing this is that people are going to watch. Many people watch. Please comment if you've done this type of work and you have a different translation. Please feel free. Leave a link in the comment or something. Check it out and go there. Maybe have another debate. Or it's not a debate right now. Obviously, Paul is doing a presentation. It'll be a debate later on about the different things found. So many definitions. Obviously, you can get it's kind of a joke. You could put 5 lawyers in a room and agree on one certain law. After they read it, of course not. They're going to debate for about 10 hours. Matter of fact, you can come back in about 2 weeks and they're still sitting there. They're hungry. They're starved. Nobody has showered. They're still sitting there debating, put it in front of them because it's the way they decipher it and so forth. It's very confusing. Somebody who has actually put the time in to do the work, as Paula has done, I thought it was very important to get out here and say, okay, everybody, because everybody takes criticism for different things and say, okay, well, yeah, I'm a carpenter. Okay, well, maybe this guy builds it differently than I do and does different things. And you can have a discussion on that. You get attacked for that because no, you don't do it this way. You do it that way. That was the reason for this, because Paula has done her homework on this. So when she's speaking about what she's talking about or typing about, she knows what's going on.
You mentioned,
if anybody wants.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
You mentioned about lawyers arguing over words. It brings up a really interesting incident that Jesus had in conversing with the Pharisees and scribes, scribe being a scripture scholar. They were trying to trap him, as they were in the habit of doing, and they came up with him with a nitpicky legal question that had been a debate that had been going on, which you wouldn't know if you didn't study the context, It's because it's not in the Bible text itself. There was a debate between two rabbis that had been going on for quite some time, and each rabbi had a following. So they were these two arguing groups, and they were arguing over the laws of Moses about divorce. And they said, one of them said that the wording here means that a man cannot divorce his wife except for unfaithfulness. And the other meaning was, well, wait, God said it in such a way that it means you can divorce her for unfaithfulness or any reason. And so they were asking Jesus, what do you say? They wanted him to pick sides. And what he said was, no, it says just for unfaithfulness, because what the rabbis wanted to do was excuse their habit of just throwing away their wife because she burned dinner. And in that culture, in that time, that was pretty much death, because she was obligated to be in some man's house, and he's throwing her out on the street and being really cruel. And they were, if you ever read parts of the Talmud, which is not to be confused with any part of the Bible, but it was written between the Testaments, and while they were the Israelites were in captivity in Babylon, but it was very misogynistic, and they were trying to excuse their horrible treatment of their wives, and they wanted Jesus to take sides in their debate. So what people do is misunderstand that. They don't know any of that, and so they misunderstand it to say that Jesus was absolutely hard-hearted about, no, you can't divorce except for unfaithfulness. And they don't understand what he was really saying there. He's just saying you can't be a lawyer with the commandments of God. You can't think like a lawyer. And instead he's saying, you're being cruel. If your wife hasn't been unfaithful, what are you doing throwing her out in the street? Because later on in the New Testament, we'll see the apostles writing details more about other situations, such as there was the habit of and it wasn't just a habit, it was a command of God, that because of this social situation, you couldn't just throw a woman away. And if she was widowed, then a relative of her husband had to marry her. If she was widowed without children, okay, because it was important to have children because of how land was handed down and all that. And so if, her husband died, she had to be married to another man in the family. Well, for Christians, this presented a dilemma if they were Israelites, because then they were told not to marry an unbeliever. Well, what if a relative of their husband who died was an unbeliever? What do you do? So they were asking that. And that's what a lot of the New Testament is we're hearing half of a telephone conversation, and we have to piece that together, and it takes some work. And that's another one of those things that people misunderstand. And so that was just a little thing that popped into my head when you were talking about lawyers. And I saw a question in the meantime in the chat about the underlying text of the Bible. There are different text families. There are different groups of them according to different scholars. But the point is, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the differences are mostly in weights and measures and coinage and spelling of names and things like that. What I did is I took a collection of them, and there's a website called Scripture for All that had a very handy tool that ran on my computer at the time. I don't have that anymore, and I don't have that tool anymore, and I'm glad I did this when I had that, where it helped give the parsing and all that information. Plus, and I didn't agree with everything they did, and there were some typos in there. But that's why I did a lot of cross-checking with a lot of different sources. But what they would do in there is they would say, I chose a version that would have the Westcott-Hort version and the Nestle-Allen version and a whole bunch of, like 3 or 4 different Greek families of documents. And there wasn't just Greek, there was also Sinaitic, there was some Coptic, and a bunch of other documents of that era that all factor into this. And what you do is you look at all of those and compare them, and then compare the scholars' writings, and then compare the different translations, and you take all of that together and then reach a conclusion the best you can based upon checking everything you can check about it. So when it comes to underlying documents, I used a group of them and tried to do just the best I could to piece them together. So I hope that answers whatever that question was. It's gone now.
Well, hopefully it does. We'll find out shortly, I'm sure. I see there's a link in the side. If you want to put the link in the side out there in the chat so people can check it out, that's fine.
Oh, what link is that?
It's in the Hangout we're in.
I mean, what's a link of a YouTube of something?
I'm not sure.
All right, I'll check that in a bit.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat is also saying that doctrines of Christ, deity of Christ, are being altered, and that's simply not true. If you look, I'm wondering if this person, Flat Circle, has the ability to read the Greek and can show me where various Greek families changed that. A lot of what, especially the King James only people will say is, and that's what he mentioned, he or she, the Flat Circle, mentioned the received text. That's a term given to what's also called the majority text, which is what the King James is based on. But majority is a misleading term. When you think about it, if you wanted to alter the Bible, the people who are most likely to make a lot of copies are rich people with an agenda. So you can't just go by which has the most number of copies. You take it all into consideration. And when you do that, you see that these are not denying the deity of Christ. And if you're going to alter the scriptures, you're more likely to add something than subtract it. Because the way they did things in those days, if you had to make a comment in what you were copying, you put it along the side or whatnot. And sometimes it was ambiguous enough that people, the next copyist, the next generation, would put that in the text as if it belonged there. Well, by studying all the document families, you can figure out where and when that happened for the most part. And not one of them, not the NIV or the NRSV or any of the modern Bibles, denies the deity of Christ. It may be missing from one part, but there in another. So if the translators wanted to deny the deity of Christ, they did a terrible job of it because they only picked out one spot, whereas what it looks like is that was added there by a copyist. So it isn't what was taken out of the Bible, it's what was added in that was corrected. So there's always another side to the story. And I realize that's not convincing. If you're already convinced, if somebody's convinced that the modern versions all corrupted the Bible, or Westcott and Hort were evil Satanists, which they were not, there's an entire website defending them that gives their side of the story. So there's a lot to consider in all this. And once again, if someone is saying that a certain Greek text family has an omission in it, they need to show that to me. It's easy to just pick and choose, copy and paste from critique sites, just like people do with the Ball Earth Flat Earth thing, and just grab something and paste it. And that's not what you do. You have to go and show me what's wrong with it. ADR had a question or something. I don't see.
Oh, Anthony's out there. Okay, Anthony, hey.
Yeah, Jehovah's Witness Bible for Swamp Lover, I guess it is, without any vowels. See, I could figure that out. And that's how textual criticism works. You could figure it out because, Anyway, Jehovah's Witness Bible is the New World Translation. Yes, they do alter it. I've seen where they altered it. I went to the Greek and looked at it and saw that they had changed the words. And nobody knows the name of the translators of the New World Translation. So if you're going to put out something you say is the authoritative translation, you better know who did it. And every other translation gives the name of the scholars who did it, and you can look them up. Not the New World Translation. The Mormons did change it also. The Mormons say that Jesus was the brother of Lucifer, and that they both presented plans on what to do with mankind or something, and they accepted Jesus' plan but not Lucifer's, and so he got mad, blah, blah, blah. They make up a whole new story. But
which can become very dangerous because somebody grabbing that book for the first time, picking it up and not maybe or perhaps reading it, and they go through that, or they could be different versions of the Bible out there. It's so very confusing, including Masonic Bible, which a friend of ours actually has a copy of that, which was doing a presentation some time ago. And you look at all these different ones all over the place. So it's very dangerous to just pick up one and say, got it. I got the word. I hear it, and boom, you go on that. And there's so many different translations of what's going on. It's almost like and my forte is more about the law and different things that I do, not the Bible, of course. And I've always said this, so you could go back and watch anything I've ever talked about. And the way you define the word that you're looking for and how you act or whatever you're doing and different things, it means something. And as you go through that contract, the terms and conditions of that contract can definitely change, and what the meanings are. By the time you're at the bottom, you're so confused, you're just like, okay, well, let's go ahead and sign this and get it over with. And do it.
Right. That's context again.
Yes. So it's on a different stage. It's we're talking about the Bible on this stage, and at some point I'll probably do something on the law. And I know a couple of people that know some different meanings of different things on that, and that'll be a fun conversation because of the different ways you can interpret that. If you think the Bible has so many definitions, boy, wait till we do the one on the law and what's going on today with the law and different meanings on those words. That's absolutely out there. Wow.
Yeah. That's why it's so important to know the context, and that's why legal documents are so keen on sometimes defining their terms, or at least presenting them up front. Any document you ever tried to sign, that you would say, okay, this word means such and such, that word means this person, and all that sort of thing. But yeah, you have to read around and look at the culture and everything if you want to really understand the Bible. Somebody at ADR asked, was Jesus put on a cross or post or tree trunk? I put that up here. You can read it on the preface of the translation, what my reasoning was on that. So just not to take too long on that, but it's right there if anybody wants to read it.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good. I'm sure. And anybody, feel free to go back and look, and please post in the comment, and I'm sure everybody get back to you, or somebody will get back to you, and we'll see what the content is. And could even do it in private chat, not even go live, just have a private chat, nothing recorded, and just something, and maybe have a debate on different things, because obviously there's more than one side. My feeling, my gut feeling was telling me, okay, everybody's attacking Paula, and it's been going on for some time, and it's got to stop, and it is going to stop. And what's nice about this right now, she's done the work on this. I have seen what she's done. I have spoken to her many hours offline. She's got this, and understands. Okay, is this the end all? No, it's not the end all, because it's the same thing with law. It changes, constantly and all the time with how you interpret and the way you interpret the words. It doesn't mean this is it and this is the only. It means that, okay, she's done her homework. So if somebody's going to come at her, okay, show us your homework. Show us what you have done. Do a presentation on your own channel or something, or present it, and then let's have an open debate about it and go from there. I mean, there's 20 different versions. Great. There's going to be 20 people that have 20 different views on what's going on, or maybe they received a piece of paper out of context, and all of a sudden they're like, aha, I knew it wasn't true. I know this and that and this and that and this and that. Well, where did it come from? Did it just like miraculously appear in your hand or something? Was it the burning bush that you watched in the backyard or something? No, come on. Pull up some information that you have, and some research that you've done. And shame on most people for the attacks on the Bible and different things.
Right, and I wonder.
It's built into us, in my opinion. It's built in, and shame on the people for attacking it differently without actually doing some of the research or looking into it. Is where I'm coming from. That's just me.
Right, and I don't consider it attacking if somebody just disagrees. But if they do disagree, they should say why and show me from the Greek text. And their expertise in knowing which Greek family is more accurate than the other, because very few people can do that. But what's attacking is when you judge and condemn somebody for just believing something you don't like. If they don't believe the Bible, that's fine. But if they say, you're awful or stupid or backward or unenlightened because you believe the Bible, that's attacking. But so what I'm saying is, I'm sure almost everybody will disagree with me on parts or all of the translation I did, and that's fine. I just want them to have a good reason for disagreeing and show me where they think I've been in error, because I can change it if I need to. All those tools I showed, because I can go in and change it if I want, because this is my study tool, and I put it out there just because I thought other people might benefit from it. I didn't want to keep it to myself. It's just my own study. I'm just sharing. So I'm not trying to say that all the other translations are wrong. I'm just saying, here's another way to put it that I think is valid. And if you don't think it's valid, then show me. ADR made an argument, I guess you could say, if I understand it right, because if you can't have definitive answers, then your whole kit and caboodle is invalid or something. Yeah, there it is. I disagree with that logic, because there isn't anybody in the world who can answer every question about what they believe or choose to disbelieve. There's nobody who can do that, and that doesn't mean
you'd have to apply that to the globe and to the flat Earth and to
right, exactly. Too. Neither side can answer
every definitive answers to both.
Yeah, never. Yeah, nobody can answer every question, even on that, and nobody can do it on philosophy or religion or supernaturalism or naturalism. Nobody can answer every question, and that does not invalidate their whole system. It just doesn't. I just don't agree with that logic.
Even the astronauts can't answer how they got there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I promised I would not correct Joe. I'm sorry. Let's get back on track. Keep it on track.
But Paula, thank you for demonstrating on how real research is done. It's not, most people think it's just going to the debunk video and they researched it. But yeah.
Well,
good job.
That way, thank you, and thanks, Larry, for letting me babble on about it. Babble, ha ha ha.
Oh, no, and look, all the friends, and these are definitely my friends, and in chat are friends, and I have many and several close. Know that I'm not online with, and I don't mean that online. I'm not like holding the Bible in my hand type of thing. I'm not that type of guy. It's something that is built into me that I genuinely know. The amount of work that Paula has put into it, I believe should get out there. So before anybody tries to go at her and make your presentation, and I don't mean just go to Google and say, oh, here it is on Google, because that can change within minutes. It has the files and has them saved, and she's done the translation. She's put a lot of time into this. Before you go attack somebody, do some homework first. And at the end of the day, more than likely, you're on the same page that you're on the same page with. It doesn't make any sense. And that's why I'm glad that Paula accepted my invitation to do this. And the guys are here with Wade, Jibby, and Brian, and moderators out in chat and stuff. I'm glad, because it's not that we all believe in one thing and all of a sudden, they're all on board and they're all running around with King James. If you get and run away from this, this chat with that information and you start spreading it, you're nuts. Because no, I just said, I don't. Many of us don't. There's so many different translations. And by the way, Paula doesn't either. She has a Greek to English, which is not the King James. It's something different than the King James Version. And, so many people just take a small amount or a snippet of something that is said, not realizing the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say, and God rest his soul. He's been gone for many years. If anybody is that old as I am, would remember that from the radio shows he used to do, and his son does it now, carrying on. The rest of the story first before you publish, or before you go public with something, and get all the information you can and do some research. The research is what brought us together here, what brought you folks in chat, everybody together, how in the flat plane, because I do believe it's flat, that's my opinion, that's fine, everybody does, how would we have all met each other otherwise? Okay, I'll just be riding up in Canada and all of a sudden I'll bump into Wade, or I'm going through New Hampshire and I run into Jibby's house, or I'll be out by Las Vegas and all of a sudden I'm playing the slots and Brian's like, nah, screw that, man. Come on over here and play poker with me. Bump into Paula in Ohio on the way out to go see Brian. Come on, there's reasons for everything, and I think that's the most important thing. Information out there. Dissect it as you will, take it as you will. We can put some links up or add some links to this later. I certainly will, on how to get to these different things here. Knowledge Scavenger, which is Paula. Check out her website, Jibby's website, Jibby Jedi. Some great stuff there. Wade's page, he's got different things on there. His page, so we're not going to mention Brian right now. No, I'm just kidding. Brian has some certain things on his channel as well that publish different things from different backgrounds, and once you kind of put it all together, it's definitely an awakening. Any one particular idea because has an expertise in something. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is. We don't all have the same expertise in the same thing. That would make any sense at all. I would almost put out a challenge, and I would say, listening or listening to this in the future, I don't have that many friends, but let's say I have 10 friends, and you have 10 friends around the table of some kind, and you're all playing a game, and at some point you say, or make a statement, and how many of those 10 friends are going to agree with you? Well, if you have 2 or 3, because if you have all 10 of them agreeing with you, well, that's a problem. That's not a room that I would like to be in. I would probably say, okay, check please, and I would leave. Yeah, because nobody's going to agree. It's the human element of agreeing to disagree, and that's the influx of ideas that we all have. So that's why I wanted to bring Paula on after I saw this, and the work that she did. I did not realize the amount of work that went into it. And I said, well, I definitely have to put this out there because it's taken some time to do this. Not that I did not believe her before. We don't agree. We're still friends. That's okay. Information to get out there before you go after somebody. You better kind of understand the amount of homework that they've done to actually be able to discuss this openly and talk about it. And once you've done that kind of homework, well, then we can have a debate or an open discussion about it. And I promised I would not swear and keep it very simple. Just shush a little bit, and maybe you'll learn something and do your own homework. And then once you're ready, come back and have an open debate about it. And that's what's nice about it. Some can be very heated at times, as I have been, which I know you guys have all seen me be that way. And some can be very nice and very subtle and just a regular discussion, debate between 2 people. But make sure you do your homework first before you come after somebody that's probably already in the seat that you're, I don't know, push them out of. I'll just use that term. Make sure you've done your homework first before you come and try to attack somebody with some kind of knowledge that that person might already have. Be polite, because that's the type of person they are, and they're being attacked by someone who is just angry at something and going at them for something they pretty much don't even know what they're talking about. I said that correctly. Was that pretty good?
Yeah,
Works for
well,
me.
that's the difference between the conviction between knowing and believing,
Mhm.
right? Like
And go.
Paula has her conviction because she knows, right? Because she's done her research, right? Whereas
Yeah.
a lot of people have convictions just for their beliefs, right? Because they don't want to find out that what they believe in is wrong, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. And we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna have this has been the serious side right now. The funny side, and obviously I crack jokes all the time. I get off on a tangent sometimes, and
no,
we're gonna
you
go
Larry.
ahead and never, Wade, never.
No, you're always Mr. Serious.
We're gonna do an after party. We're gonna get fired up here fairly soon. Just bear with us a little bit, and we'll throw some links out there to everybody that we know. And it's been great, Paula. I thank you for the presentation. Jibby, thank you for
thank you very much.
handling questions and background. And Wade, of course, and Brian. Thank you also. Brian's handling more on the outside.
Are we live yet? Are we live?
Yeah, we're still live.
Oh,
No.
all done?
Oh, that.
No,
The
no,
other one? Oh, no.
no.
Oh, we're done.
Yeah, we're still live, but we're actually what I heard there's a new channel or something that came up. Jibby, help me out here. Jump in. I haven't heard you for a while now.
Yes, yes. This comes straight from the dark side. They have been watching all of you flat earthers for a while, and they've decided to join.
Oh,
Actually, it's defectors from the dark side who have joined.
oh, great. That was just a bomb at the end. That's great, Jibby. I appreciate that. That's
I
terrific.
dropped a bomb on you, Larry.
Oh boy, Jibby, are you ready to fire up,
Yeah,
or
I just
do
need
we?
like 5 minutes for everybody to join. Everybody head on over to the Flat Earth Mafia channel.
Flat Earth Mafia channel. Do tell. What is the Flat Earth Mafia channel? Please.
Well, it's a group of people trying to get things organized. It's about organized. It's all about getting organized.
Flat Earth Mafia channel. Wow, that's pretty good.
That's right.
We will have to get.
Gonna take it.
No, actually, I know D. Snyder. That's funny, from Twisted Sister. He's a Long Island boy.
Now, are you going to leave this one up until he has, he could post a link here when he has the Hangout set up, or what do you want to do, Jimmy?
Well, once I get it set up, I go bye-bye from here.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, exactly. So we'll. Well, with that being said, it has been a nice hangout. Please join Jibby Jedi.
Post the link to the watch page in the chat for it. The one I posted up here. So people can, make the transfer.
Post it where?
Yeah, the
post
chat
it there?
can stay even after this goes offline.
Right. And I'll post
it there. Yeah.
Well, you can post the watch page in the chat. It won't let me because I might be signed into Flat Earth Mafia also, and it's preventing me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll work on this, and we'll make sure that the link gets out there.
Yeah, I posted it in the group chat up here. There it is at 8:54.
Okay, got that. Okay, well, take your time in setting up, and
it's set up. I gotta start it.
Oh, okay. So your chat's open, and people can just go over there now.
Well, the chat's open. I have a little message there, and
okay.
It's just a matter of starting it, opening up so I can get the link to it, and then send the link to you guys.
Okay.
Alrighty. Yeah, I might take a short break and I'll be over there. Thanks again, Larry, for hosting this, and you and Jibby and Brian and Wade for being seen on the panel with me, and everybody in chat for showing up. I really didn't know if anybody would come for something
Well,
like this.
you pay good. You pay good, Paula, so I had to say it.
I control you guys.
She pays us with her friendship. That's all that we ever need from her.
Exactly.
They couldn't
Hey,
resist.
Wade, yeah, Wade, be quiet. You're in the basement. Stop it.
Get back down there.
Oh, man.
Somebody
All right.
lock the door.
Well, thank you everyone for watching, and please comment. And this was a serious one. We do a lot of stuff, a lot of goofy stuff sometimes. This is a very serious topic, and many people get very upset. So wanted to keep it very low key, which I believe we have, and had a little bit of a little bit of cracking up here and there. Please post in the comment. We'll take a look at what you have and the information you have. Possibly do another one with like open debate or something like that with different perspectives on what's going on. Until then, we will post the link. Actually, Brian's already done that, so that's good. And peace all. God bless. See you soon.
Thanks again.
Later, all.